This is the inlay banding that I'm starting on this tabletop. So what I want to do next is basically flatten that and get it nice and smooth. And then we're going to build a little apron around here. And I originally wanted to do it out of the same sycamore. We didn't quite have enough, so I have an alternative. But I'm going to cut this in half and have about a 2.5, maybe a 3-inch size apron. And I'm going to do a little decorative walnut around the whole thing in terms of a beading to add a little class to it. So here's the final glue up of the inlay banding that I'm making for this tabletop. So we've already glued in the 2 longer pieces. We got these 2 shorter ones drying now. We'll take that out. And so we're going to make a table out of this. The tape on here so it's flush, so it'll be higher than dragging. So this process with the 2 layers of tape did not work. The router base was up in the air, but it wasn't high enough to be above the inlay banding and the mount it stuck up. So let me show you what I did next. So blue tape and CA glue for a mini flattening jig. Alright, now that I have this raised up, and these are higher than this, and it'll run smooth across this, hopefully, and I'll be able to lower this down to here to be able to get a nice even cut with the top of that. A simple test to make sure my bit does not touch the top of my table and extend past the frame, and away we go. So after the first run, you can see that I've got this thinner than the edge of this card scraper. So that's good. So now I have very little sanding to do. You can see the little lip where I had to stop right there. That's the amount that I had to take off. So now we'll finish doing the other pieces. And this feels good, just enough that sanding will take care of the balance. All right, we got this sanded down to 120. We're gonna put some mineral spirits on it so you can see what it's likely to look like. The finish on it. Okay, so this is the top of the little table. I'm going to use this piece of maple. Got a little bit of figure in it for the legs. And I'm going to use this piece of veneered, highly figured maple veneer for the apron. So I have my leg stock on my straight cut or tapered jig. So it has just a little bit of wane on it here, a little bit of bark here and down here. So I'm just going to cut about a saw blade width in here just to create a straight line for this, and then I can cut the rest up against the fence. Alright, now I can take this and put it up against my fence to cut it whatever width I need for my leg stock. And with that, I cut my 4 legs from my table, approximately 1 1/8 inch square. Alright, so here's the maple veneer that I'm going to cut. I need 2.5 inches twice for the height of the apron, and we'll get that cut and we'll have it rough sized. So I'm cutting my veneer maple with the good face down to make sure I don't have any rip out, blow out on the edging of the veneer. So I cut these little pieces of walnut with my router bit to make little beading, and so these are little strips that I made to be able to make this trim around the apron. So now I had glued this on, just wrapped it with glue, so I'm going to take all this out, and this will be my apron for my table. And the reason I did this is because this veneer was this thick and you could see, because it's only a veneer, the other edge, and we didn't want that to show. Since this will be underneath the table, it's not going to matter. We'll sand off these burn marks and we'll start table assembly. After I have my legs rough cut, before I put in the taper, I do a little dry fit just so I can see how my table is going to look when it starts to get close to finished. These are my legs, and it's important when you're matching these legs up, left front, right front. So these two guys look like this. So the joinery goes between here for the apron. So to prevent your holes, dowel holes in this case, from matching up and going into each other, we mark them. So you can see they're offset by a ½ inch. I'm going to be using 3/8 inch dowels, and they will go in the respective lines every ½ inch, therefore they will not intersect. So I'm using my dowel wizard where it spaces the dowels exactly 1 inch apart, and this is a ½ inch mark. So off I go, cutting my dowels for joinery for the legs. The key to fitting these dowel holes, the staggered dowel holes, into the ends is I have my legs drilled. These are offset. So now I want to mark where they go in this one. So I put these holes up, put my straight edge along this side of our fitting. Make sure this is square, and you can see it's off a touch. So there we go, square. So I mark this center line because my jig, and then after I do that, I mark the center line over here. And then I can use my center line on my dowel wizard to know that that's the center line between these two 1 inch spaced holes. Dowels in here, and let's see how they fit. I think it's a little smaller. I got the E, and this over here is E. So after all the dowel joinery was completed, it's time to do a dry fit for the table. Hammer everything in without any glue, just to have a quick look and see how our table looks. Okay, here's a rough dry fit. The table and our aprons. They look nice together. So I'm going to taper the legs to 3/4 of an inch. There's about 1 1/8 now. So I'm going to cut off on 2 sides to leave a 3/4 inch leg. So I've marked all my legs now, and it is the outside corner that's going to remain the original, and the 2 back sides and side is what we're going to cut away. So we're going to do that on our taper jig. So this is my taper jig. Again, I'm going to be cutting off 2 sides of this to make this 3/4 of an inch. So we'll cut this side here first, then we'll rotate it 90 degrees and cut the second side. So I have some built-in stops. I've already measured this, so I can, since I'm doing a total of 8 cuts, I got my measurements exactly precise, then I screw down some pieces so I can replicate that cut multiple times. So I'm making the cut starting at 9.5 inches. According to the Fibonacci ratio, that's exactly what I need to do to create that 9.5 inches out of the 25. So here we go. So tapered legs are the key in the table to adding a little bit lighter touch to it. In this case, I'm only tapering about the bottom third of the leg, and you want to do 2 sides or 4 sides depending on what your preference is. And so in this case, I have the stops already built in. They're screwed down pieces of wood to hold it at the exact location for each cut. So I got 4 legs, I'm making 2 cuts, so I got 8 cuts. You could do this without the stops, but you have a tendency to not get it as precise if you have the stops. So now I've got my leg rotated. Now I'm ready to cut the second side and push my sled through the table saw, and voila, there you go. You got a tapered leg. That creates a nice tapered leg. Now, after sanding off all of the mill marks, we have a nice dry fit for our table. So now all that's left is to put a coat of finish on it. So here are a few beauty shots for you. I trust you liked our video on this inlay banding and this sycamore top and the beading on the apron. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of our videos, consider subscribing down below. And as usual, come back and see me real soon.